Hashirim. I'm just going to read the last verse of the previous chapter. Until the day breaks and the shadows have fled, turn, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or a young stag on the mountains of Betel. Well, that was a very nice and deep verse that we already explained in the previous chapter, and I'll continue. And he reads, on my bed at night, I sought the beloved of my being. I sought him, but I did not find him. As we know, Yahushua HaMashiach speaks of the parable of the 10 virgins that were waiting at night. Some of them, well, actually all of them fell asleep. But then when he was coming and they woke up, only 5 of them had enough oil for the lamps. So only 5 of them had the light when the time came, because the others did not prepare enough. So in a similar idea, when it comes to how the night represents obviously the time of darkness, but spiritually a time of evil, of pain, of punishment, of, well, injustice, etc. And reason why it is written that the Son of Man would come like a thief in the night. So since Mashiach came as the light of the world, when he left, pretty much through the apostasy, darkness started. And the enemy, through those whom have decided to worship him and serve him, has for years, trying to bring his rule, which is pretty much what the New World Order will be, when the abomination of desolation will rule for 1,290 days, and the beast for 42 months. So he has been preparing for that moment, while obviously Yahweh has been saying it and showing how he's going to destroy it. Like I said, coming like a thief in the night. So when everything is dark because of the works of men, because of the sins of the people, the enemy is going to be able to manifest, because that is what the people have been expecting or bringing to themselves, as it is written in Thessalonians, that because they did not have love for the truth, Yahweh will send them strong delusion. So since they did not accept the truth, they want the lie. And when the lie manifests because of their wishes and the use of their faith, to put it in a way, spiritually, when he manifests, they will accept him. Sadly, like a lot of the people in the world. And then Yahweh will manifest and take away that falsehood from this reality and establish his kingdom for eternity, starting with 1,000 years. So all of that just to say that we are in that night that is mentioned here. On my bed at night, I sought the beloved of my being, just like the congregation is expecting the manifestation of the beloved one, the beloved of the being or nephesh of the congregation. Here, ahava is the word being used when it comes to the beloved one. So, as we know, which is interesting, so I'll mention it right now. As Yahuchanan said, Yahweh is love. So he said Yahweh ahaba. So if we go to translator and write ahaba, which is love, we have that 5, well, for those who don't know, each letter in the Hebrew alphabet has a numerical value. So I'll just mention the numerical value of each of the letters that are here and then explain. 5, 2, 5, 1. So 1 plus 5, that's 6, plus 2, that's 8, plus 5, that's 13. So this word is numerical value 13. Deuteronomy says Yahweh Echad. Yahweh Echad, which is written this way. Yahweh is one. Yahweh Echad. This letter, as I mentioned here, the numerical value is 1. The Het is 8. The Dalet is 4. So 4 plus 8, that's 12, plus 1, that's 13. So Yahweh is Ahava, Yahweh is Echad, Yahweh is 13. And also Yahweh said, I am the first and the last. As two words here that have the same numerical value. Yahushua came to show the love of Yahweh for the world, for humans. So he sent his son to save us. The last will show the unity of Yahweh, the oneness of Yahweh, how only he is mighty, only he is the creator. So Yahweh said, I am the first and the last. And the name Yahweh, as we know, Yud Hey, Vav Hey, don't mind that. Yahweh, as you see when you put, well, they used to write Yahweh, remember, but anyways. So the name Yahweh, we have that is the numerical value 10, 5, 6, 5. So 5 plus 6, that's 11, plus 5, that's 16, plus 10, that's 26. So as you guys know, 13 plus 13 is 26. So Yahweh as the first, showing the love, Yahweh as the last, showing that he is one, the only one. We see that he says, the beloved, the one I love, pretty much, the one that my soul loves, nafshi. So the soul, which pretty much represents what is within the congregation, right? The beloved of my being, the beloved of my soul. I searched for him, but I did not find him. So people who are believers have been for a long time, but it's, well, maybe because the more time passes, obviously everything gets worse, but also we get to experience a different life that we used to. So we are more surrounded by people or things that we watch that have to do with the end times and all of that. But it is like even people that don't believe in the Most High or the book of Revelation, even they, some of them are saying that it is not normal. Something is happening. Like everything is about to just be done. And even in many of the false beliefs of the world, of course. So I say that because a lot of people are looking for the Messiah. Some who believe in him are looking for him to come back. Sadly, through false doctrines, they are looking for something different or a different manifestation that is not going to happen. So others may not be looking for the Messiah, Yahushua himself, as written in scriptures, but they are looking for salvation. And they don't understand that Yahushua is salvation as a person, right? So pretty much how Yahweh encapsulated salvation for humanity, that was in Mashiach. So everybody's seeking him, mainly, of course, the congregation. For it says, the beloved of my being. So the congregation is looking. And for a long time, it says here, I sought him, but I did not find him. Come, let me arise and go about the city, in the streets and in the broad places. I seek the beloved of my being. I sought him, but I did not find him. So people are going everywhere to look for the truth. They're going to a bunch, like there are a lot of people, and actually I just met one of them, a brother from the congregation who came from Spain, and he has been telling me part of his testimony, and he has mentioned how he went through a lot of beliefs, pretty much trying to find truth, and he got very orthodox to a certain point. Well, he tells me certain stories that it's very interesting to see all that process and how much he wants to find the truth and serve Yahweh, and that the enemy has used to kind of confuse him in what, like for a while, for years, like it has happened with many of us in false doctrines, whatever we may have, well, in which doctrine we may gotten ourselves into. So as it says here, come, let me arise and go about the city, right? Like everybody going somewhere, congregations, or in this case, it says the city, of course, where there are there's more people, so more possibilities for her to find him. But like I said, compared to the fact that nowadays also congregations are more about, well, churches are more about getting people in order to get the money, and therefore is a business, which is kind of what was going on in a city, right? The main point of the city for everybody to go and do business. So come, let me arise and go about the city, in the streets and in the broad places. I seek the beloved of my being. I sought him, but I did not find him. I just remember a verse that may not be that connected, but I'll just mention it anyways. In Isaiah 42, see how it says, see my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one, my being has delighted in. My chosen one, my being has delighted in. This being is pretty much the nefesh of Yahweh, and that is Yahushua. The nefesh of Yahweh is Yahushua, his person, his manifestation, through whom he received an image, pretty much, for Yahushua is the image of Yahweh. So the fact that it says here is pretty much saying that this is the chosen, obviously, of Yahweh, but through Yahushua, which is interesting because that has to do with Revelation 22, where Yahushua speaks about sending his messenger. That will be the chosen of his being, the chosen of the being or nefesh of Yahweh, which is Yahushua. So see my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one, my being has delighted in. I have put my ruach upon him. He brings forth right ruling to the nations. You see, he brings forth right ruling to the nations. Yahushua brought salvation, redemption. Now the last Yahweh sends to bring the kingdom, and therefore he will rule the nations with a rod of iron, as it is written as well. He does not cry out, and this is the verse that I wanted to read for the point that I'm trying to make. He does not cry out, nor lifts up his voice, nor causes his voice to be heard in the street. This is interesting because that's what a lot of people are expecting the two witnesses to do. And there are a lot of people who are hoping to be the two witnesses who are doing that, trying to fulfill it. But it says he does not cry out, nor lifts up his voice, nor causes his voice to be heard in the street. Now, this is a very important, powerful chapter that we will read eventually here. So, like, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but to say it in a nutshell, it's pretty much speaking about the ministry, the ministry of the witness like Moshe, the way he would manifest, which is twofold. For he is a descendant of Yahusef, of Ephraim, which means double portion or double fruitfulness. So he comes with a double mantle. So this chapter pretty much mentions both mantles, and one is pretty much the one obviously here that talks about him preaching, about him teaching the doctrine of Yahweh, and another one which has to do with him pretty much fighting spiritually against falsehood. So it seems to show two different I mean, for some it may be a little bit of a contradiction what this chapter says, but it is pretty much showing, like I said, two mantles, and therefore two ways in which he would speak, and the reasons why, pretty much, as you see the context when you see the whole chapter. But this is pretty much referring to him as a preacher, and he says that he wouldn't go to the street, he wouldn't go looking for the people in the city, for instance, right, in the street, trying to convert them. It would be a different way. It says, a crushed reed he does not break, and a smoking flax he does not quench. He brings forth right ruling in accordance with truth. Yahushua is the truth. So it says here that he brings forth right ruling in accordance with truth. So he will do it according to what Mashiach told him, according to what Yahushua wants, for he is the truth. The last does justice, therefore right ruling. But also there are some, and obviously it is fulfilled. Well, I mean, it is true. This verse also has to do with Mashiach, how he came and went, and wickedness continued in the world because they didn't accept him. So a crushed reed he does not break, and a smoking flax he does not quench. They were hoping for him to quench the power of the Romans, for instance. But there were other things that had to happen for 2,000 years for the rest to be fulfilled. So I'm not going to continue with this one, but the point was that he is not in the street crying out, which is where she went to look for her beloved. Come, let me arise and go about the city in the streets and in the broad places. I seek the beloved of my being. I sought him, but I did not find him. So these are, well, this is the bride that represents the congregation, those who are seeking the presence of Yahweh, and therefore the manifestation of the beloved one. And remember, beloved, well, in this case, let me see, it might be exactly the same as the previous one right here. Yeah, ahava. And obviously, like I mentioned in the explanation regarding the word ahava as 13, and the fact that it was mainly fulfilled, of course, through Mashiach. Obviously, there's love in the last as well, for Yahweh is love, and the last represents Yahweh on this earth. But Yahushua showed that love by being the son that manifested to die for us as the lamb, and to show the love of Yahweh for humans. So obviously all of this, we can connect it with Mashiach because of this, but also with the last because of the context and the night, and the fact that beloved is also the translation of the name David, or David. And that is the name that also represents the last, for several reasons that we see in the prophecies, but I'll continue. The point is that, as I always say, the first and the last pretty much fulfill all prophecies, but in different ways. What the first fulfilled physically, in a literal sense, the last fulfills in a spiritual sense. So there are pretty much two fulfillments of every prophecy that has to do with Mashiach that are fulfilled by the first and the last. So the same here when interpreting this. The point is the sent, the son of Yahweh. So come, let me arise and go about the city, in the streets and in the broad places. I seek the beloved of my being. I sought him, but I did not find him. The watchmen who go about the city found me. The watchmen. So they are pretty much the ones that should be telling the people about the coming of Mashiach. They are the ones who should be telling the people what is going on, what is going to happen, and how, and all of that, according to scriptures, of course. The watchmen who go about the city found me, to whom I said, have you seen the beloved of my being? Scarcely had I passed by them when I found the beloved of my being. So you see how it confirms pretty much what I was saying regarding how she went first to the preachers of the world. She went to the churches of the world around the city, streets, broad places. But after she passed those preachers, watchmen, and till this point, they have not answered anything, as if they didn't say anything. But once she passed them, she found him. So she didn't get stuck with them. She continued, and then she found him, the beloved. Scarcely had I passed by them when I found the beloved of my being. Also, you see how there is an effort that must be done. But I did not find him once, but I did not find him twice. For 2,000 years, since Mashiach left, he was not found, but everyone was waiting for him, because even Paul wrote about hoping to go in the harvest, right? To be alive for that moment. So, two, I did not find him, and one, question. So, seeking answers, looking for the truth. And then after 2,000 years, for instance, here with the two, I did not find him. After passing, scarcely had I passed by them, who the watchmen who were supposed to reveal it, when I found the beloved of my being. I held him and I would not let him go. This is interesting, because this is what Miriam wanted to do with Mashiach when she saw him after he resurrected, right? But Mashiach told her not to pretty much, well, some translate it as do not touch me, but the word, as I had explained, is not to get a hold of him or hang from him, like in the sense of get clingy and everything. It, like here we see, I held him and I would not let him go. Mashiach needed to go to the Father, so he told her, let me go, I need to go to the Father, because she did not want to let him go anymore, for she had thought that he had died. So now that she sees him, she wants to get a hold of him and not let him go. Now, in this case, well, continue the verse and then explain. I held him and would not let him go until I had brought him to the house of my mother and into the womb of her who conceived me. Remember when Yitzhak, when Sarah died, Yitzhak, her son, was mourning her death, and he was obviously very sad. But then we read that he got Rebecca, as his wife, and then he brought her to pretty much Sarah's tent, or by becoming his wife, she came to heal the pain that he was feeling for the loss of his mother. So obviously she didn't replace Sarah, but she was the one who filled that void that she left within Yitzhak. So it's similar to what we see here when it comes to her wanting to bring the Messiah to bring her beloved to the house, but also it is like when we learn of Mashiach, we want to let everyone in our family know and know him and accept him. So I held him and would not let him go. That's how how we should do with Mashiach, with his name. We should hold on to the name and to Mashiach. Therefore, right through the name, through the belief in our heart and confession of his name, we do that covenant, and we should hold on to it and not let it go ever, until I had brought him to the house of my mother and into the room of her who conceived me. I have put you under oath, O daughters of Jerusalem. Pretty much confirming what I was saying here regarding making that covenant through Mashiach. But now, well, obviously going to say more. I have put you under oath, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by those of the field. Do not stir up nor awaken love until it pleases. Also, well, here in this case, once again, it's ahava, but it's saying the love, ha'ahava. Do not awaken the love. And therefore, 13 plus the 5 would be 18. And 18 is the numerical value of the word chai, which is a living being or one life, or chaim is what is translated as life, but it is plural, so it should be lives, chaim. So life referring to this life or the next life, one of the two, of course. The chet and the yud, that does, like I said, well, would be 8 plus 10, so we got 18, which is the numerical value of ha'ahava, the love. And that's interesting because Mashiach resurrected on the 18th of the first month, the 18th of Aviv. So he got eternal life on the 18th. And obviously he was eternal before he got into a body, but now he became eternal with a body. So that's the point. And he gives us the eternal life. And it's interesting because look what it's saying. Do not stir up nor awaken love, right? As in, when you are asleep, that represents to be dead. So when Mashiach resurrected, he was waking up. Do not stir up nor awaken love until it pleases. Until it pleases. Which also has to do with, we cannot force Yahweh to manifest his will, or, well, to manifest what must manifest in our time. It has to do according to his will in his time. So do not stir up nor awaken love until it pleases. And I say that also because in Judaism, they many times teach how they can bring or accelerate the coming of Mashiach. So it says, verse 6, who is this? Interest. Who is this coming out of the wilderness like columns of smoke, perfumed with the myrrh and frank incense from all the merchants' fragrant powders? So let me see something in verse 6. Marot. All right. So who is this coming out of the wilderness? This is very interesting because when Yahusef was sold as a slave, he was sold to people that were merchants, and they were selling fragrant powders. So, as I have explained in the past, the life of Yahusef or Yosef, we can see everything that says in scriptures about Yahusef, we can separate it in two, representing the first and second manifestation of Yahweh on this earth. So the first part is when he is sent to see how his brothers are doing, and they decide to throw him in a pit in which he lasted for 3 days, according to the testament of Yahusef. And then they took him out, and Yahudah sold him. So that was to represent how Yahushua would be sent from the Father to see the state of his people, his brothers, and they, in this case, Yahudah, same name, different time, obviously completely different person. Judas, of course, but originally would have been Yahudah, but because of the change which they were making to the name, most likely Yehudah. So Yehudah sold Mashiach, and they killed him and sent him to the pit for 3 days, that pit being Sheol. After they take him out of the pit, they sell him as a slave, and they took him to Egypt, where the second manifestation begins, where the representation of the second manifestation as a slave within the nations, and all of that comes with it. So it is interesting, this verse right here, for it is similar also to Isaiah. Let me go to Isaiah 63, and I'm not going to read too much, but look how the prophet asks something similar. Who is this coming from Edom? So the prophet sees the manifestation of Yahweh, but he doesn't recognize him because he comes from Edom. Just like Yitzhak didn't recognize Jacob, for he was dressed as Asaph, who was called Edom. So who is this coming from Edom with garments of glowing colors from Bozrah, who is robed in splendor, striding forward in the greatness of his strength? It is I, says Yahweh, right? It is I who speak in righteousness, mighty to save. So now she's asking something similar, in the sense of she is seeing the manifestation, but she doesn't understand it. So she asks, who is this coming out of the wilderness like columns of smoke? For remember that there are two, like I said, two manifestations, one that is fulfilled physically or literally, and then one spiritually, one to the first and then the last, or vice versa, the fulfillment of the prophecy depending of it. And the same happens with the prophecy about him coming with the clouds. There are two manifestations for it. First the spiritual, and then the literal. In the middle of those two, there will be the manifestation of the Antichrist, and that is the issue that many people will face, because they will be deceived by what the enemy is preparing. So the spiritual manifestation of it is the fact that he comes like a thief in the night, covered in the sense that covered by the darkness of the night, like a thief would cover his face, not to be seen by the cameras. Like that he would enter a house when everybody is asleep. So we see that she talks about do not stir up nor awaken love until it pleases. So she talks about awaken, and we saw previously how it connected with the parable of the virgins, in this case the bride being the wise one. And it says, who is this coming out of the wilderness like columns of smoke? Remember also what we read in the book of Revelation and in Kings and Chronicles regarding how when the temple of Shlomo was inaugurated, a smoke came in and the priests had to come out for the whole time of the feast. So just like the Malachim with the 7 plagues come out of the temple because there's a smoke that fills it, which is the presence of Yahweh. And they cannot come in after the 7 plagues. And that happens after the death of the two witnesses, that the presence of Yahweh fills the temple. So who is this coming out of the wilderness like columns of smoke? Let me see once again. Who is this who ascends from the desert? As we know, Mashiach went to the desert before starting his ministry. He went there for 40 days and 40 nights, just like the people went around the desert for 40 years. And Moshe in the desert received the Torah. So it says it's coming with like columns of smoke. Also, remember how in the wilderness, Yahweh was covering the people with a cloud and was leading the people with a pillar of smoke by day and a pillar of fire by night. So who is this coming out of the wilderness like columns of smoke? It says columns in plural, as in once again, first and last, Yakin and Boaz, the two pillars at the entrance of the temple. Perfume, and I say that it's plural even in Hebrew, right? We see here the ot. As this would be as, and then pillars of smoke. Well, ketimarot ashan. Perfume with myrrh, Hebrew mor, and frankincense, levona, from the Lebanon, or white, pretty much the root of the meaning of the word. And incense represents the prayers and the deeds of the righteous. Perfume with myrrh and frankincense. And as we know, these two were part of the gifts given to Mashiach. Myrrh representing the pain that he would have to go through, just like the last has to go through affliction. Well, the two witnesses. This represents that affliction. In fact, we saw that they gave, in the book of Adam and Eve, they gave Adam and Eve 3 measures of myrrh, representing the 3 days, and also the 3 messengers that Yahweh would send, who would be murder. Right? That's yeah, and like I said, more right here, or myrrh. Anyways, and frankincense represents the intercession. Yahushua is the one who would intercede for humans. As I have also explained, it is possible, because of the fact that the last is Michael in the flesh, that he would come to intercede for the Malachim. Just like Hanok, who is a representation or the same as the last, Hanok would be was interceding for Malachim before Yahweh, but they did not receive a pardon. So I have mentioned that possibility because of several interesting things that scriptures tell us. So perfume with myrrh and frankincense from all the merchants' fragrant powders. So that's how Yosef got to Egypt. So then I'll continue. And well, this verse I had explained because it also appeared in the previous chapter. So I have put you under oath. Let me see, verse 5. Daughters of Jerusalem. It's about, that's interesting. It is very similar to the Sabaoth of armies, or by the Ayelot of the field. I have mentioned, right, the tribes connected with Speed, Naphtali. And that is interesting now that I mention it, because you see how the word seems, well, as you can see, it is pronounced Sevaot. which is pretty much the same as Sabaoth, right? And I mean that means armies, but here they are translated as gazelles, right? And the gazelles are fast, like the tribe of Naphtali. Naphtali was really fast, like a gazelle. The scripture talks about him like that. And that's interesting because Naphtali means my struggle or my fight, as a army would fight. Then Ayilot. So as we know, like I said, I have put you under oath. The oath that Yahweh put us under was the Torah, and then renewed through Mashiach. So we died to the Torah according to the letter to enter into the oath, which is with the Torah under or according to the Ruach, the Spirit. O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or those of the field, Ayilot, pretty much speed and strength. Do not stir up nor awake love until it pleases. Who is this coming? I already said that. Now, verse 7. See, it is Shlomo's couch. See, it is Shlomo's couch. 60 mighty men are around it, of the mighty men of Israel. So, verse 7, behold, says Mitato Eshloma. 60 men are around it. It's interesting because the letter Samech is the one that has the numerical value 60. And it is this one right here. So it is a circle, something that surrounds the void. So 60 men are around it, like the letter Samech, which is also a shield. It represents a shield and a support, because in the order of the Aleph Bet, it is the letter that is next to the Nun, which represents the fallen one, because it is the first letter of the title. So also, if I put it in this order, that means miracle. The miracle was that Yahushua, the faith in Yahushua, became the support for the fallen ones. And I'm not talking about the fallen angels. I'm talking about humanity who fell in sin. Hope that's clear. And also, it is the flag mentioned in Isaiah, and that is Mashiach at the right hand of the Father in the heavens as our flag. So, it's here, right here. And like I said, the miracle that Yahushua, the faith in Mashiach, which is the shield according to Ephesians, is the support for those who have fallen in sin. And the last, who is the prodigal son of the story, the last is a descendant of Nun, interestingly enough, which is the name of this letter, Nun. The last is the descendant of Nun, who is supported by Mashiach, by his faith in Mashiach. So, see, it is Shlomo's couch. 60 men are around it, of the mighty men of Israel, all of them holding swords, skilled in battle. Each one has his sword on his thigh because of fear in the night. This is interesting because it is written, well, not in scriptures, but in other books of Judaism, mainly. Although I've read some, regarding this that I'm about to say, that was Judaism. But there are other books in Islam and other beliefs that Shlomo, because of his wisdom, he started to deal with stuff that he shouldn't. And I mean because of his wisdom in the sense that he wanted to experience everything to grow in wisdom, but he didn't, he wasn't as careful as he should have been for he wanted to get to know everything, what it was to be intelligent and what it was to be dumb. So he did dumb things and he got in contact with demons and spirits, stuff like that. So he got it is, and there are several um, versions of the same story. And the one that I believe would be the most believable is the one that is written in what is known as the Testament of Shlomo, in which he explains that one of the demons, Asmodeo, or Asmodai, or they put different pronunciations for it, he deceived Shlomo and told him that he needed to use his ring for a moment. And I'm just making it like really short. And so Shlomo made the mistake of taking off his ring, which was the one given to him, according to some, by Malach, in order to have power over spirits, animals, humans, pretty much everything. So when he took it off and gave it to the demon, he turned himself into the likeness of Shlomo and kicked Shlomo all the way, well, very, very, very far away from the kingdom, so that he would have a hard time coming back, finding his way back. So during all that time, the demon, ruled as Shlomo. Now there are, according to one version, that actually happened in the literal sense. According to another version, Shlomo entered into a trance in which he lived at, and it pretty much lasted for years, but then he woke up and just minutes have passed. So there are a couple versions of it. Just like the second one that I mentioned is the one that came, or that I saw, from what I believe is a little bit of Islam. So the other one from Judaism. So he went and then came back to the kingdom, and everybody was rejecting him because they thought he was a poor person who was crazy, thinking he was the king. But then he was able to send a message to his wife and told her to check the feet of whom she thought was Shlomo. And when she did that, she had, he had feet of like a bird. So that's when she realized that he was a demon, and he got back to the throne. So that is the story in a nutshell. And I say all of that because it is said that because of the experience that he had with that demon and other demons, other evil spirits, he became very afraid of the night because he was attacked all the time. So that's why he slept with 60 men around him for protection. As it says here, each one has his sword on his side because of fear in the night. So in Judaism, they say, it's not like I've heard it from a bunch of them, but in a couple books of how this has to do with the fear that he ended up having because of his dealings with demons. Eventually, he did not like the night because of the attacks of those evil spirits. So he felt more comfortable sleeping with 60 warriors around him, pretty much. So all of them holding swords, skilled in battle. Each one has his sword on his thigh because of fear in the night. Now, in the spiritual sense, I already mentioned the 60 having to do with the shield, which is the belief in Mashiach. Mighty men, let me see if it says Giborim, 7. Shishin Giborim. So yeah, 60 Giborim, which has to do with Geburah, which is what the last brings around him, Giborim of Israel. Also, since it is a circle and the scripture says that Yahweh is over the circle of the earth, it is pretty much like the last who brings peace, meaning of Shlomo, who gathers the chosen few from the four corners of the earth, which is a circle like the 60 represents because of the letter Samech, where the mighty men or the Givorim of Israel are found. All of them holding swords. Yahushua is the sword, for his name is the word of Yahweh, and the word of Yahweh is the sword. Skilled in battle, for we are in a spiritual battle. Each one has his sword on his thigh, like it is on the thigh of Mashiach, that it is written, King of Kings and Sovereign of Sovereigns, because of fear in the night. So the thigh is connected with covenant as well, like the oath up here. That's why when they would make a covenant, they would hold, like for instance, Eliezer held Abraham's thigh when promising him that he would bring a bride for his son Yitzhak. Because of fear in the night, because of all the evil of this generation, we need to get a hold of the sword, which is the word of Yahweh, in order to be ready at all times. So that was verse 8. Sovereign Shlomo made himself a litter of the wood of Lebanon. I already mentioned regarding Lebanon and how it has to do with whiteness, and that spiritually refers to purity. A litter of the wood of Lebanon, and that was pretty much the best wood. He made his posts of silver, its support of gold, its seat of purple. Within it was decked with love by the daughters of Jerusalem. Within it was decked with love by the daughters of Jerusalem. So I'll repeat and explain a little bit more. A litter of the wood of Lebanon. Wood connects with the sacrifice that everyone must do. For Yahushua said, get your cross and follow me. Just like also we are trees, for we give fruit of our lips that confess his name. So as Hebrews 13:15. And then, so basically through the purity that we receive from the sacrifice of Mashiach, silver that connects when it comes to the few and the many, that represents the many. Posts of silver, its support of gold, the few, which will be the support, like I mentioned regarding the Samech, for the posts, which would be the many, like the letter Nun, for they would fall, they will have to go through the great tribulation and die during the harvest as the grapes that are thrown in the winepress of the wrath of Revelation 14. But they will find support in the few who will not experience death through the transformation. Its seed of purple, which represents kingship, royalty, for it is the mix of blue and red. Blue representing the first, the water of life, and the last representing the fire, the consuming fire. The red coming from Edom, coming from red as a Gentile. So the combination of the first and the last becomes the seed of the King of the heavens, the heaven of heavens. Within it was decked with love by the daughters of Jerusalem, the congregations, the believers. Go forth, O daughters of Sion, and see sovereign Shlomo with the crown with which his mother crowned him on the day of his wedding and on the day of his gladness of heart. Verse 11. Simchat libo. Go forth, O daughters of Zion, and see sovereign Shlomo with the crown, with which his mother crowned him on the day of his wedding. Right? And I just mentioned here pretty much the representation of the harvest of the many, the few, and the time when the first and last will become one, which brings us to the wedding of the Lamb in Revelation 19. Oh, go forth, O daughters of Zion, and see sovereign Shlomo with the crown. As we see, he comes with many crowns in Revelation 19 after the wedding of the Lamb, with which his mother, in this case, would be the Ruach HaKodesh, that is within the congregation, as in Revelation 12, the Virgin, crown him on the day of his wedding, when Mashiach unites with the congregation, and on the day of his gladness of heart, Simchat Libo. So that's how the chapter ends.